Ethan Ramirez was a 35-year-old night shift security guard, hired by the state to oversee Crest Falls Psychiatric Institute, a decaying mental facility nestled deep in the Pennsylvania woods. It had been abandoned since the early 1990s after an expose revealed patient mistreatment, electroshock abuse, and over 40 unexplained deaths in just 5 years. Locals believed the place was cursed. But to Ethan, it was just a paycheck. Empty halls, broken windows, crumbling walls. His job? Make rounds every hour, check the motion sensors, and report if squatters or animals got inside. The first week passed without incident. But on the 8th night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the sensors in Ward C, a sealed wing, lit up. Ethan checked the feed. The camera glitchily flickered, revealing what looked like a figure, sitting at the end of the hallway. Slumped. Still. He assumed it was a homeless man who broke in. But when he got there, Ward C's heavy doors, supposed to be welded shut, stood open, the hinges shrieking slightly in the breeze. Inside, the temperature dropped nearly 10 degrees. The air was thick with mildew and something, sweet, like spoiled fruit. His flashlight flickered. He called out, "Security. You're trespassing." No answer. As he walked deeper into the ward, he passed rooms that hadn't been touched in decades. One still had patient restraints dangling from a rotted bedframe. Another had tally marks scraped into the walls, dozens, maybe hundreds. And then he saw it. A figure crouched in the far corner of the hall, whispering, 13, 13, 13. It was a man. Skin stretched thin over bones. Wearing a decayed hospital gown and a tag that read, Patient 1376. He had no eyes. Just sunken pits where his sockets should have been. When Ethan demanded he identify himself, the figure stood, tilted its head, and smiled. "You finally came back, doctor." Ethan stumbled backward. "I'm not a doctor." The figure stepped forward. The corridor behind Ethan suddenly bricked over. The power cut out. He backed into a room, slammed the door, and held it shut with his weight. On the other side, the thing scratched softly, deliberate and slow. Then it whispered through the door. "They thought I was gone. But I waited for you, under 13 layers of skin." Ethan blacked out. He was found the next morning outside the hospital, curled on the front steps, muttering incoherently. His badge had melted into a warped lump of plastic. His watch was stuck at 1313, a time that doesn't exist. He was never the same. Quit the job. Moved cities. But at 2:17 a.m. every night, his phone buzzes. No caller ID. He never answers. The lost village. Some places aren't on any map. And if you find them, you were never meant to leave. Tomas and his wife Eliza were hiking through a remote forest trail in northern Romania. They had heard of a hidden trail that led to ruins from the 1600s, an untouched hamlet swallowed by time. Locals warned them not to go. That place was cursed, they said. People go there and forget who they are. They thought it was superstition. Halfway through the forest, the GPS lost signal. They stumbled across an old wooden sign nailed to a tree. Vine ATI Venet in Vale Niger, welcome to Black Valleys. They found cobbled streets overrun with moss. Stone houses with wooden shutters. A bell tower frozen in time. The village looked abandoned. But food sat rotting on wooden tables. Dolls lay in beds. Fires smoldered in hearths. Like everyone had simply vanished. Tomas filmed it all. But the footage refused to save. That night, they camped in an empty cottage. At midnight, they heard bells ring. They looked out the window, and saw people. Silent. Still. Standing in the streets. Their faces, blank. Their eyes covered with strips of cloth. One turned its head toward them. Then they all began walking, toward the cottage. The couple fled into the forest. But the trees had moved. They walked for hours, always ending up back in the village square. Then, the villagers spoke in unison, 100 voices whispering. "You saw too much." Eliza screamed. The world went black. Tomas awoke alone. His wife, gone. His phone, gone. He eventually stumbled out of the forest and collapsed on the roadside. When he told the police, they searched the area, but no village existed. No ruins. No trail. Tomas still searches for Eliza. Every now and then, he dreams of her. Standing in the village square. Eyes covered. Mouth whispering. "You left me here." The library basement. Public libraries are calm, quiet places. But beneath the silence, something ancient might be listening. Lena worked part-time at the Riverview Library, an old building with ivy crawling up its stone walls. She was assigned inventory duty and told never to go into the basement. "No one goes down there," said Mr. Hutchins, the head librarian. Of course, that only made her curious. One rainy evening, she heard a soft voice calling from the stairwell. "Help me." She hesitated. It sounded like a child. She grabbed a flashlight and descended. The air was thick and cold. Dust coated the books like a shroud. She turned a corner, and saw a door chain shut. The whisper came again. "I'm still here. Don't leave me." She ran up the stairs. The next day, she asked Mr. Hutchins about it. He stared at her, expression blank. "There is no basement." She showed him the door. It was gone. The stairwell now led to a wall. That night, at home, her lights flickered. A book lay open on her bed, one she'd never borrowed. On the page, Lena tried to forget. But the library didn't forget her. Now, sometimes when she's alone, she hears shuffling paper behind her. And the voice whispering her name. The shadow on the stairs. You know the sound of your house, the way the stairs creak, the hum of your fridge. But what if you hear footsteps that aren't yours? Lucy Caldwell was a newlywed. She and her husband Daniel had just moved into a beautiful colonial home in Vermont, 2 stories, hardwood floors, and an old oak staircase that creaked on cue. Daniel worked night shifts at the local ER, so Lucy often spent her evenings alone. The first night she heard the steps, she was watching a movie. Around 2:15 a.m., the familiar sound of weight on the stairs echoed through the quiet house. Creak. 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 But Daniel wasn't home. She paused the movie, heart thudding, and whispered, "Hello?" Silence. She brushed it off, maybe the house settling, maybe a raccoon on the roof. But it happened again. And again. Always at 2:15 a.m. Always climbing. 12 distinct steps. Always stopping, right before the top. She started sleeping with a light on. Then she bought a baby monitor and aimed it at the staircase. One night, she sat in the living room with her laptop, watching the feed. At 2:15 a.m., the first step creaked. Then the second. On the monitor, the staircase appeared empty, but the audio clearly recorded the sound of movement. When she listened closely, she realized the steps weren't random. They were heavy. Wet. Dripping. She took the audio, reversed it. That's when she heard it. "Let me finish what I started." Terrified, she called Daniel, who urged her to stay calm and leave the house. But before she could, the final creak came. Step 13. Her home had only 12 steps. She turned toward the stairs, and saw a silhouette. 8 feet tall. Humanoid, but wrong. It had arms that dragged along the floor and a face like melting wax. Its head slowly tilted, as if studying her. She couldn't scream. The next morning, Daniel found her at the bottom of the stairs, passed out with blood trickling from her ears. She doesn't remember what happened. But every night, she locks the door to the staircase and sleeps on the first floor. Yet the next morning, the lock is always broken. And there's mud. Wet footprints. Exactly 13 of them. The hotel room that shouldn't exist. Hotels are meant to be temporary resting places. But what if one room didn't follow the rules of time, or reality? Daniel was traveling cross-country, exhausted after a long drive. He didn't plan to stop, but heavy rain forced him off the highway. He pulled into the first motel he saw, a faded sign reading, Sleepy Pines Inn. Inside, the receptionist was pale and avoided eye contact. He asked for a room. There's only one left. Room 217. The key was cold in his hand. The hallway was eerily quiet. When he opened the door, he was hit with a powerful smell of mothballs and something metallic. The room looked frozen in time, old rotary phone, box TV, wallpaper peeling like skin. But Daniel was too tired to care. He crashed onto the bed. At 2:17 a.m., he awoke to whispering. He couldn't tell the language. A woman stood at the foot of the bed, dressed in black, face obscured. "Do you remember me?" she asked. Daniel screamed. She vanished. The door was locked from the inside. He tried the phone, dead. Then, the TV switched on by itself. Static. Through the noise, a voice came. "You've stayed here before, Daniel. Every time you forget. Every time you return." He ran. When he got outside, the rain had stopped. The motel looked abandoned. Shattered windows. Collapsed roof. And when he checked his phone for pictures of the room, every image was just a black screen. The scratching inside the walls. You might think your house creaks at night because of age or rodents. But sometimes, something else is trying to get out. The Thompsons bought a fixer-upper in the countryside. It was cheap and full of character. But every night, around 1 a.m., they heard scratching. At first, it was in the attic. Then in the walls. Then, under the bed. They called pest control. Nothing. Then came the whispers. "Let me out." Mrs. Thompson placed her ear to the wall and heard crying. A child's voice. She broke open the drywall and found a cavity. Inside, old toys, children's drawings, and a name etched in red crayon. Sammy. 1984. They researched the home. A boy named Samuel went missing in 1984. Never found. That night, the walls bled. Crimson leaked from the cracks. On the mirror was scrawled, "You found me. Now let me live again." They moved out. But in their new home, the scratching followed. Sammy wasn't finished. The room that wasn't there yesterday. You know your house. You know every wall, door, and corner. So what happens when, one day, it changes? Natalie lived alone in a modest townhouse outside Philadelphia. She had been there for 7 years, same walls, same creaky stairs, same 3 doors upstairs, the bedroom, the bathroom, and the closet. Until one rainy morning, when she saw a fourth. It was at the end of the hallway, an old wooden door, just slightly ajar. Confused, she reached out. The knob was cold. It shouldn't be there. It had never been there. Behind the door was a staircase. Narrow. Spiraling downward. She called her sister. Sent a video. Her sister laughed and said it must be some joke, but when Natalie checked the video, there was no door in it. Just wall. That night, unable to resist, she descended. The stairs creaked for too long. Far too long. At the bottom was a room lit by a single oil lantern. The walls were lined with photographs, her photographs. Every moment of her life. Birthdays. Class photos. Times she didn't even remember. Then came the books. Shelves of them. All labeled by date. She pulled one down. It described her next day, in eerie detail. When she'd wake up, what she'd eat, even an incoming text from her ex. The next morning, it all happened exactly as written. Natalie became obsessed. She read deeper into the books, days, then weeks ahead, until she found a volume dated only, final entry. Inside, it read, Natalie goes into the room for the last time. She opens the red book. She sees herself. Then she disappears. Panicked, she fled. But when she turned around, the door was gone. The hallway was gone. Only darkness remained. And the last thing she saw was a wall, covered in photos of herself reading this exact passage. The reflection. A mirror always reflects what's in front of it. But sometimes, it reflects what's coming next. Sophie was a collector of antique oddities. Her latest find was a massive silver-framed mirror from a 19th century estate sale. The seller warned her, don't stare too long. It might blink. She thought it was a joke. She hung the mirror in her bedroom. The first night, she noticed something odd. Her reflection didn't match her movements exactly. It lagged, by half a second. Then, it started predicting her. The reflection would tilt its head moments before she did. Smile while her face remained neutral. One night, brushing her teeth, she caught her reflection waving at her. She wasn't waving. Terrified, she covered the mirror. But that night, she dreamed of being on the other side. She was trapped behind glass, pounding to be let out, while the other Sophie, smiling, turned away. She awoke to find the mirror uncovered. A note taped to it read, "Thank you." She smashed the mirror to pieces. But now, every reflective surface, her phone screen, windows, TV, is starting to glitch. And sometimes, they smile before she does. Voices from the baby monitor. Baby monitors help parents watch their child. But what happens when something else starts watching too? Alex and Brianna were first-time parents. Exhausted, overwhelmed, but overjoyed. Their newborn, Lila, was beautiful and healthy, though her cries kept them up all night. To ease their nerves, they installed a high-tech baby monitor with night vision and two-way audio. It let them hear everything from their room. Everything. One night, while watching TV in the living room, they heard a lullaby coming through the monitor. It was a soft hum, a woman's voice. Neither of them were singing. They rushed into the nursery. Lila was asleep. Alone. They searched the house, nothing. Convinced it was interference, they moved on. But the next night, the voice returned. "Shh. Don't cry, little Lila. I'm here." Brianna turned white. Alex checked the monitor settings. Nothing explained it. Over the next few nights, the voice grew bolder. It started talking to them through the monitor. "You look tired, Brianna. Why don't you go rest? I'll watch her." They set up cameras in the nursery. The footage chilled them. At exactly 3:33 a.m. every night, the room grew slightly darker, even in night vision. Then, a shadow formed over Lila's crib. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. But it watched. Then, one night, the monitor clicked on by itself. And the voice said, "She's mine now." The couple fled. They never returned. But the monitor, now in storage, still turns on by itself. And every time, it whispers, "Lila, don't forget me." The forest whispers. People say the forest speaks. Most don't listen. Some hear it, and never return. Jake and his 3 friends planned a weekend camping trip deep into Black Hollow Woods, a dense, silent forest untouched for decades. Locals called it cursed. They said people went in and never came back. Jake thought it was nonsense. The first night was normal, campfires, beers, ghost stories. But as they zipped up their tents, the forest went silent. No owls. No crickets. And then, whispering. It circled their camp, light, quick, almost like wind, but carrying fragments of words. A chant? A conversation? Jake laughed it off. Kevin, the quiet one, looked disturbed. "They're saying my name," he whispered. The next morning, Kevin was gone. His sleeping bag was empty. No footprints. No sound. Just, gone. The rest of them panicked. They tried to leave, but the trails had changed. Trees looked wrong, twisted. Compass needles spun in circles. That night, the whispering came back. Louder. Clearer. One down. 3 to go. One friend ran screaming into the woods. They never saw him again. By sunrise, only Jake remained. He found the exit by accident, emerging dazed and wild-eyed. Years later, he still wakes up at 3:33 a.m., hearing the whispers. And sometimes, he whispers back. The forgotten train tunnel. There are tunnels in cities that no one remembers building. But someone, or something, still uses them. In a quiet, post-industrial town nestled in the Appalachian foothills, there was an old train tunnel the locals whispered about. They called it the Throat, a crude nickname passed down through generations. No trains had run there for decades, and no one knew where the tracks went. They just vanished into blackness. Eric, a young urban explorer with a YouTube channel, came across a grainy Reddit thread about the Throat. No photos. No maps. Just one comment. Don't go past the 3rd pillar. It knows you're there after that. Naturally, he went. With only his flashlight and a GoPro strapped to his chest, Eric slipped behind a crumbling drainage wall and ducked into the tunnel. His boots echoed across rusted tracks, and the stale air stank of oil and something old. 3 concrete pillars stood tall inside, covered in graffiti that became less human the deeper he went. Strange symbols. Eyes with too many pupils. Script that moved when he wasn't looking directly at it. As he passed the 3rd pillar, his camera died. His phone, dead. His flashlight flickered. Then came the sound. A low, metallic rumble from far down the tunnel. Not like a train on tracks, but like something massive dragging chains. A light appeared. Pale, yellowish headlights. But there was no sound of wheels. No engine. Just the sound of metal screaming, and weeping. Eric ducked against the wall, filming with his backup camera. What came into view wasn't a train. It was a long, windowless box of rusted steel, floating inches above the rails. Faces pushed against the metal from inside, as though trying to escape, mouths open in eternal silent screams. It stopped. A door slid open. And a child stepped out. Her eyes were pitch black. She held up a photograph. Eric's photograph. You missed your train. You don't miss it twice. Eric ran. The tunnel grew longer behind him, stretching endlessly. He never escaped. A week later, another explorer found his GoPro footage posted to Eric's own channel, uploaded at 3:33 a.m., by an account that no longer exists. The girl in the cornfield. The wind rustling through corn isn't always the wind. Sometimes, something older moves through the stalks. Jacob's father inherited a dusty farmhouse in Kansas from a distant uncle no one remembered. It was isolated, miles from the nearest road, wrapped on all sides by thick, never-ending cornfields. Locals warned him to leave before the harvest moon. They said the girl returns then. Jacob, 13, thought they were just trying to scare him. Until the night he saw her. It was just after dusk. He was walking along the edge of the corn when he saw movement. A girl, barefoot, in a white dress, her back to him. She was swaying, humming something old and off-key. He called out. She froze. Then turned. Her face was wrong. Smooth. Skin stretched over hollow sockets. No eyes. No mouth. Just the hint of a scream pressing from the inside. Jacob ran. But the stalks moved to block his path. No matter where he turned, the rows shifted, gently, like they were alive. When he finally burst free into the yard, he was gasping, scratched, and shaking. His father laughed it off, until that night, when Jacob started whispering in his sleep. Let her out. Let her out. He drew spirals on the walls. Corn kernels spilled from his mouth when he coughed. Then, one night, he walked into the cornfield barefoot, humming her lullaby. And he never came back. Every harvest moon, if you walk the edge of that field, you can hear two voices humming now. And they're always getting closer. The man in the attic. You think you're alone in your house, until one night, you hear footsteps above your head. Claire was a 27-year-old nurse working exhausting night shifts. After inheriting her late grandmother's old house in the suburbs, she finally had a quiet space to call her own. The house was charming, wooden floors, antique cabinets, and an old attic with a pull-down ladder. It was the kind of house that creaked at night, but Claire liked its character. She felt safe, until things started disappearing. At first, it was food. A slice of bread gone, a juice bottle emptied, utensils misplaced. She blamed herself, maybe she was just too tired to remember. But then she started noticing stranger things. Lights left on that she knew she had turned off, the bathroom mirror foggy when she hadn't showered, and worst of all, the lingering smell of stale sweat and old clothes near the air vents. One night, while lying on the couch, she heard it, a thump directly above her head. Then a slow creak, like someone shifting their weight on old wooden boards. She stared up at the ceiling. The attic. Armed with a flashlight, she pulled down the attic hatch. Dust sprinkled her hair as the ladder unfolded. Heart pounding, she climbed up. At first glance, it looked empty. But in the corner was a makeshift bed of old blankets, an empty water bottle, and a notebook. Inside were pages filled with chilling observations. She sleeps from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Leaves fridge open sometimes. Her favorite show is CSI. I like watching with her. One entry read, I think she knows. She paused today when she passed the vent. I held my breath. She didn't see me. Claire screamed and stumbled down the ladder. The police arrived in minutes. They searched the attic and the house, but the man was gone. No fingerprints. No signs of forced entry. To this day, Claire never found out who he was, or how long he had been living above her head. 10. The mannequin in the hallway. Decor or not, mannequins shouldn't move on their own. Carla worked at an upscale boutique that specialized in vintage fashion. At the back of the store stood a life-size, faceless mannequin named Mirabelle, a tall figure draped in 1940s couture. No one knew where Mirabelle came from. She'd been in the store longer than the current owner. She's part of the charm, they said. But Carla always felt watched when near it. One evening, while closing alone, she noticed Mirabelle was facing slightly to the left. Odd, she could have sworn it had been straight. She brushed it off. But the next night, it had moved closer to the fitting room. Then, right outside the staff bathroom, she started marking its base with chalk. Every morning, the marks had shifted. She installed her phone to record overnight. At 3:33 a.m., the mannequin's head turned, slowly. Then its hand twitched. The video abruptly cut off. Carla told the owner. They laughed it off. Maybe you're just tired. Then customers began complaining. They swore the mannequin's mouth moved when no one was watching. One even heard it giggle. Carla decided to destroy it. That night, she waited until after closing and took a sledgehammer. But as she raised it, a whisper filled the air. That's not very polite. The mannequin's arm grabbed her wrist. She dropped the hammer. It never hit the floor. The next morning, Carla was gone. All they found was a recording on her phone. Her reflection in the boutique's mirror. Behind her, Mirabelle, smiling. The boutique is closed now. But at night, passers-by say they see something in the display window. A mannequin. That moves when you blink. The midnight caller. A random call from an unknown number isn't always random, especially when it comes at midnight. Every single night. Maya had just moved to a new city for a fresh start. After a traumatic breakup and years of anxiety, her new apartment, small but cozy, was supposed to be her sanctuary. She worked from home and rarely went out, finding peace in the solitude. Until the phone calls started. It was midnight. Her phone rang, unknown caller. Curious, she picked up. Hello? Silence. Then, slow, ragged breathing. She hung up. Maybe just a prank. But the next night, it happened again. And again. Always at midnight. Always the same breathing. By the fifth night, the breathing stopped. This time, a voice spoke. Why did you leave me? She froze. The voice was male. Familiar. But warped. She blocked the number, but new ones kept calling. Sometimes multiple in a single night. One number traced back to her childhood landline, a number that hadn't existed in years. Terrified, she started recording the calls. One night, on a whim, she reversed the audio. The whispered message said, I'm in your house. She tore her place apart. Nothing. But one detail haunted her. There was a locked maintenance closet directly across from her apartment door. It had always been locked. She begged the landlord to open it. Inside was a nest of blankets. Trash. A cell phone. And dozens of photos of Maya, sleeping, eating, working, taken through her windows. The police arrested the man, a former stalker she hadn't seen in years. But even now, Maya's phone rings at midnight. And when she answers, no one says a word. The passenger. Ride-sharing apps are convenient, but what if your passenger isn't from this world? Josh was a late-night driver for a rideshare app. It was a quiet Tuesday when he got a ping near the old cemetery outside town. Odd place for a pickup, he thought. A woman in a white dress got in. She didn't speak. Just enter the address, 318 Grayson Lane. As he drove, he tried to make conversation. You from around here? She turned slowly. I used to be. When they arrived, the house was burned down. Just a skeleton of wood and ash. Josh turned around to ask her if it was the right place. She was gone. The seat was wet, as if someone had sat there drenched. When he checked his app history, the ride didn't exist. No address. No name. He later found out that 318 Grayson Lane burned down in 1972. The only victim? A woman in a white dress. The apartment above. You think your neighbors are noisy. But what if the apartment above you has been empty for years? Jordan Kim moved into Unit 3B of a quiet, aging apartment block in downtown Chicago. Freshly single, he wanted a fresh start, cheap rent, brick walls, vintage charm. The landlord assured him the building was peaceful and mostly occupied by elderly tenants. Above him was Unit 4B. Vacant. At first, he liked the silence. But within his first week, at exactly 3:03 a.m., he began hearing footsteps pacing overhead. Slow, deliberate. Like someone walking back and forth, dragging something. He shrugged it off. Maybe the unit wasn't empty after all. He asked the building manager the next day, and she gave him a strange look. That apartment's been empty for 11 years. Ever since the woman who lived there vanished. Jordan pressed for more, but she waved it off, muttering about police investigations and sealed floors. That night, the noises started earlier. Furniture scraping. Muffled crying. And then a rhythmic tapping, 3 knocks in a row. He banged on the ceiling. It stopped. But when he woke the next morning, there was dirt on his ceiling. As if something had walked across it, upside down. The next night, he stayed awake. Recorder on. Lights off. At 3:03 a.m., the sounds returned, but this time, they moved down the walls. As if, descending. Then came a whisper through his floor vents. "Let me in." Terrified, he ran upstairs to 4B. The door was sealed with police tape and a rusted chain. But the air around it was cold, unnaturally so. He peered through the keyhole. Darkness. Until an eye opened, on the inside. Looking straight at him. He staggered back. The door creaked, but didn't open. That night, he slept with every light on. At 3:03 a.m., the lights all blew out. The next morning, he found a photograph slipped under his door. It was of him. Sleeping. The timestamp read 3:03 a.m. And in the photo, someone was standing at the foot of his bed. The man with no face. Have you ever seen someone in your dreams so many times, they begin to feel real? Tara had been having the same nightmare for weeks. A man in a black suit, standing at the end of her bed. But his face was a smooth, featureless void. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood, watching. She dismissed it, until her younger brother said, "Why is the man with no face always in your room?" She froze. One night, she tried staying awake. Coffee. Music. Lights on. At 3:14 a.m., they all shut off. The room turned cold. Tara couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. And there he was. This time, he leaned closer. Whispers filled her ears. Ancient. Wrong. Then, he touched her forehead. She woke up screaming. But her mirror reflected something impossible. Behind her, just for a second, was the faceless man. Now, every night at exactly 3:14 a.m., Tara's lights flicker. And she no longer dreams, because she never sleeps.